Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Paranormal Rangers with Michelle Miners and John Dover and Stanley Milford Jr. How are you doing, John, today? Good to
I'm
see
I-
you.
I'm doing great. Stan is a little bit under the weather. I keep telling him to quit passing out and falling asleep in the gutter. No, just kidding. Um,
Oh,
no,
dear.
he caught the one of the local bugs flying around, so he's a little bit down now, and so we're all wishing him the best to get better.
That's good. I wish him the best, too. Shout out to Stan. I hope you're watching, and I hope you're going to get better so we can have you back on the show. What an
Yep, and every time you're not on the show, we're gonna give you a hard time.
he's in a spa today. No, I'm just joking. I would love to be in a spa. But anyways, how was your week, John? You had a pretty good week?
It was, let's just say it was very, very busy. And in fact, today I went to Winslow for a doctor's appointment that was scheduled. And then I came back home, which is a 60-mile round trip. Then I went for another 100-mile round trip to Flagstaff. And I had to take care of some stuff there. And I just got back just a little while ago.
Oh,
So,
that's wonderful. I'm glad you made it safe. I know that we had talked a little bit earlier about you doing your weekly travels because you live out in a very remote area and you have to go places to do your shopping, to, do domestic things or, around the area. So you have to drive a little bit.
yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way though. Having grown up in Los Angeles, I love the peace and quiet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that is certainly a busy town to be raised in. I'm in Salt Lake, as you guys all know. It has gotten really, the traffic has gotten outrageous here. I'm sure there are a lot of people moving here because it's a really nice state to be living in. But I'm beginning to feel like that's why I love to go camping. People don't know that I go out into the wilderness and spend a day or two camping, and I love that. It just kind of takes you away from the city life a little bit, especially with the growing traffic and the growing population here. But it is a great state to live in, as sure where you live as well, John.
oh
So
yeah, except I don't camp.
you don't camp.
I got,
Yeah, I do.
no, I gotta have that pillow top bed.
That's right. You got to have the comforts life, and you deserve it because that was your whole career, wasn't it? When you were out.
Yeah, we spent so much time camping that I don't even care if I see another cot. So,
Honesty, honesty. Well, this is what this show is all about, giving you the facts. It's been really interesting, and it's an interesting subject matter that we're going to talk about is time travel and time slips. And I love this topic because I've heard so many people talk about things or experiences that they have. They could understand, even if it is for a moment. I have a couple of stories to share within the show, which I'll do. But it is a fascinating subject because our minds can't really get around what time slips are or whatever time travel is. So, John, do you have any interesting stories? I've heard of anybody who have had these experiences with time travel.
well, like I said earlier, I've had a lot of UFO sightings
Mm-hmm.
all through my career for 40 years living out here, and you know when I was working, saw them all the time, and toward about the middle, probably around the 90s, I
Mm-hmm.
started having missing time episodes, and each episode was about 30 minutes long, where I'd been missing time. So getting kind of frustrated with it, I finally says I'm going to get me a dash cam, and we had the predecessors to those in my job. We had mini DV tape recorders mounted in the windshield, and those are the ones with the big suction cup where you had to constantly, every single day, several times a day, be pumping them up so that they'd stick to the windshield. Otherwise, they'd fall off with your camera, and
Right.
you wore a microphone on your on your uniform, and that way, when you did a traffic stop, everything was recorded. And so they obviously they didn't let me keep that, but then they came out with digital recorders, and me and Stan actually used those like little body cams.
Hmm.
So um, after I put that on, I never had any more missing time episodes. And like I always say, I'm good with that. I don't care if I never see another UFO. Um, I'm over it.
You had enough experiences to for a lifetime. It sounds like that you really have. Did it affect you in any way? I mean, did it affect the way you slept, or did it your eating habits? Did it have any physical or emotional or psychological effects on you? I know that's kind of going in a different direction.
Not really. You really watch the psychological aspects,
Hmm.
um, because as a law enforcement officer, if you start becoming a little bit unhinged,
Hmm.
they will actually send you to see a psychologist, and the psychologist will make a determination if it's safe to have you on the road. So, because you might just go nuts out there, apparently. So, you're always very careful about that kind of stuff. Um, and just so everybody knows, even though I've had a lot of um, experiences with missing time and UFOs, uh, I tend to remain skeptical. It's just this idea that I'm not going to buy into the first thing that I see. I'm going to try to look for some other terrestrial explanation. I want to go up to this saucer and kick it over onto its top and look and see whose name is printed on the bottom where it says, made in Taiwan or something. Um, I'm curious like that. I want to know who made it, and the times that I've seen UFOs up close, there was an overwhelming curiosity where there's absolutely no fear at all. Um, I would actually walk up to it if I could and knock on the door and say, hey, can you give me a ride? Something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So many people tell their stories, but they don't understand the psychological effects that have on their lives, and it's really interesting. I've told this story before on another show, where I was in another state. I went up there to for a business venture, and I was with a business partner, and we were driving. This is what was really interesting. We were driving during the winter and got caught up in a snowstorm, and we were heading up to, I guess, Pendleton, Oregon, and I had fallen asleep on the passenger side, and they were driving, and I actually put it in the GPS maps app, what direction to go, what position, and all of a sudden I woke up about, I would say a couple hours later, and we were like right next to the Willamette River, the river that runs the one. Do you remember the big river that runs through Oregon, the huge one?
Yeah, that's the one that has all the salmon in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to remember. I don't know why it eluded me in that moment. I was thought it was the Willamette River, but it may not been the Columbia River. Excuse me. I did
Yeah,
remember the Columbia. And I felt a little weird. I felt a little I dizzy, I guess that's the best way. And I looked out to the window and there was some fog, and all of a sudden I see a Native American woman on a canoe back in the 1700s, and it was like her name came into my mind, that is Sacagawea. I went, "Oh, that's interesting." You know? And she was, I mean, it was like why am I seeing this? Am I asleep? Am I having a dream? And the fog lifted up, and I could see on the other side of the embankment of that huge Columbia River, and there was nothing over there but just wilderness. And I know that there's a city across the Willamette, and all of a sudden I came to, and it was like I was in my present day in the car, and I go, "Where are we?" And it turns out the driver had didn't know where they were going. And they said, "I don't know. I got lost." And I said, "Well, we're supposed to be on the highway 70 miles to the, I would say, to the north, and we were going to Oregon." And we thought, okay, that's really weird. So they put it in park, and we had to be with that. We had to catch our breath and just say, what just happened? It was like they were caught up in that moment of time travel, as I was, but apparently I had to have that experience. And I've told this story before on another show, as you remember, John.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where you have to go, okay, what was that for? And I did have a connection to her, in that moment. I just felt her spirit. I felt who she was and what she did for the Native American community in that timeline. So that was a time travel experience.
Yeah, me and Stan have a mutual friend that we used to work with the tribe,
Mhm.
and they related to us one time that they were every year, or every now and then, they do a uh, a long walk deal where
Mhm.
they actually go from say Benito and Fort Defiance, and they hike uh, through the possible routes that were actually taken, because there were many different routes. Some of them went through Santa Fe, where they were paraded through the city, like trophies, and there were other routes that just went aimlessly through the deserts. And they were telling us that at one point it was early in the morning, and again there's a fog,
Yeah.
and within the fog they could see people moving.
Yeah.
They were all walking along, and what they said is that they were, some of them, they were singing songs, Navajo songs, and they watched this group slowly passing by,
Mhm.
and then they disappeared into the fog, and then everything turned back to normal again. So they believed that they actually saw parts of the long walk. And what was intriguing to me is that my father was, as a kid, was a Hollywood actor, and he worked with people like Jimmy Stewart and Deborah Kerr, and all these other old timers that were in the movies back in the 50s. And every time there'd be a movie that would come out, he'd uh, my grandmother would take him back to the reservation, and he'd say, "Hey, everybody, there's a movie showing. Let's go see it." And they'd go to the theater in Gallup. And my my great grandmother was in the theater, because he's bragging, "Hey, you got to see me. I've got a whole minute of dialogue."
Mhm.
and and my great grandmother, they said, got up in the middle of this thing because they were showing, um, Navajos marching along, and they were singing. And of course, they're extras, so they could have been depicting Cheyennes or another
Mhm.
tribe, but they were singing in Navajo. And she got up and walked out of the theater, and I guess they followed her out, and they says, "What's wrong?" And she told them, because she had been on the long walk as a child,
Mhm.
and she says those songs that they were singing were the same songs that we sang on the long walk. And so it was kind of like PTSD and trauma for her to hear that song being sung.
I often wonder, I have people call me and they said, "Hey, I had a dream," because they don't know how to describe their missing time or time travel. And they will say, "I had this really extraordinary dreams." And sometimes I wonder if we do, like I had that impression as I was watching Sacagawea coming down with her party, Lewis and Clark. Um, I'm wondering if, that was my interpretation. Have I been asleep so much that I'm having this dream and I'm barely coming out? Because that can sometimes be kind of one of the explanations. And so we have to look at that and say, am I in a dream state or is this really happening? So distinguishing patterns. So one of the things you distinguish in your pattern was the fog. I had the same experience with the fog. And it is fascinating subject to look at and to notice that people, have
Yeah.
this thing going on. So
The
I'm
other
looking
thing that
at
the
patterns.
other thing that I noticed is the absence of any sound. It's
Yeah,
not like, I mean, you're still out there. It's not like sound is gone, but the insects, the dogs barking, all the normal things that you would hear at night are missing. And it's almost like
yes,
the dogs are kind of huddling up and staying in their doghouse and being quiet because they know something's up. But even insects and things like that, they don't make any noise. And that's another thing. So even today, um, dogs barking outside the window don't bother me anymore because I know everything is normal. So
yeah,
it's a
yeah. When you
complete
have like
difference from yeah.
the dead silence, and well, and when two individuals, I'm always with somebody when things like this happen. Is like, did you see that? Did you hear that? Or did you? What was going on? And I don't think I may have mentioned this other story to you where I was on the royal throne in my bathroom. And this is a little personal, where I was actually taken somewhere while I was on the throne. And this is getting a little personal, but and people can laugh, but that really happened. And I ended up at a friend's house and there was a presence there giving me directions and different commands, and I didn't want to do it. I said no. I had my free agency, and I came back and I physically suffered. Like my stomach, literally, I it wasn't I eventually was able to drop down off the throne and onto the floor because it was that painful to come back into my body. So there's another feature that
Well,
happens to
do you
the body.
think you might have number one, you might have astral projected,
I
or
have.
you may have teleported.
Yeah. 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 I just remember I was like, and it was in the middle of the day when that happened and occurred. So again, we
Yeah,
have all these verbiage words for it. Yeah.
I was doing a presentation at the Snippy conference in
Uh-huh.
Alamosa, Colorado, just a month ago, and I always get asked what's the weirdest thing that ever happened to me, and I tell them about going to get an oil change in Tuba City and driving up there, and as
Right.
I'm driving, I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, I'm 15 miles further up the road. Um, a very kind gentleman came up to me and he told me, you didn't go through the a microscopic black hole of the event horizon of a black hole. He says, and you didn't get abducted. He says you actually teleported, and in teleporting, you don't sometimes you don't have control of time when you do that. So it could be instantaneous. You can be on the same time scale, or the time may slip. And So, we think of time as linear, as starting at a starting place and going in a straight line um, until it ends. And sometimes, I think time is circular, that it's like a record player, and that, it can skip every now and then. Yeah, just like you have a needle in the old. For some of you, people that don't know what vinyl is, we used we used to have records, and you either had 45 or 33 and a half, and so 33 and a half was long play. They were usually big albums. 45s, 45 RPMs were singles, and I understand that DJs still use them. That way they can do this, when they're
Yeah,
doing their
me too.
DJ stuff,
Yeah.
right? But
Play the album backwards, screech it.
yeah, and I'm going to shamelessly plug a TV series. The other day, I was, believe it or not, I think I was on back-to-back episodes of Ancient Aliens, and they had recorded this like 5 months ago or so. And one of the stories that I related to, and I never really tell this story, but that was the first time I did it in front of a camera. So I'm going to fill you guys in on all the gory details. Um, when I was young, when I was small, I'm about 7 years old, in the
Mhm.
first grade, and I had a reoccurring dream. Now I'm living near Temple Street and Glendale Avenue, just up the hill on Temple Street. And in the middle of the night, me and my sister go out of the house, and it's dark out. The street lights are on. There's no sound. There's no vehicles. And if you've been in LA for any time, you know that day or night, 24/7, there's vehicles driving up and down the street all the time, and police cars going by with lights and siren, fire trucks, and there's absolutely no sound at all. We go down the hill, down the street, cross the street at Glendale Avenue. There's a Chevron station there, and across the street there used to be a library there. They actually tore it down and got rid of it and put tennis courts in. Um, Straight across the lawn is an elevated baseball field,
Mhm.
and there's no fence around it. It's just the backstop that's chain link. And I remember us going up that little hill, and we see a UFO parked up there, uh,
Mhm.
a disc shaped craft. Had to say that.
Okay.
Anyway, um, so this saucer is sitting there, and as we walked under it, I can remember in my dream seeing that this burnished metal. It's almost a bronze color, and it's got all these tiny micro scratches all over it. There are little pits in
Mhm.
it, and that's where my dream end.
Mhm.
And later on, all the way to 2006, 2007, I'm home in LA at my mom's house, and we're having Christmas. So my sisters came down from Northern California, and my brother's there, and we're all sitting around just like anybody does in a family, talking about old times and all the
Mhm.
funny things that happened. And then my sister starts talking about a reoccurring dream that she had when she was a child, and she starts recounting exactly the same dream that I had. And pretty soon we're correcting each other. Oh no, we didn't do that. We did this, or we went this way, not that way. And by the time we get under the saucer, and I'm saying I remember the bronze, and I remember the scratch marks, and that's where my dream ends. And my sister looked at me and she says, "Oh no." She says, "You ran right into that thing. There was an open hatch there with some kind of steps coming down." And she says, "You ran right into it." And I told her, "I don't remember that." Um, for those of you trying to remember things that you've experienced or maybe experienced, um, initially I talked to somebody that does hypnosis,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, "Sure, I can hypnotize you and do reverse regression hypnosis." And then they said $75 a half hour, and we're going to need a whole bunch of sessions to get you there. And at the time, I'm a working ranger, so we don't make that much money. So I just said, no, I can't do it. Later on, I talked to somebody with MUFON,
Mm-hmm.
and they told me that the recent findings are that if you find out exactly what happened, it could destroy your whole life.
Yeah.
You might not be able to deal with it. So they're recommending if you're able to function okay, uh, don't bother with it unless you really have to, unless it's just tearing you apart and you have to know. So I'll leave everybody with that bit of advice.
No, and you know what, John, you have probably made yourself famous. Like there are famous time travel stories that are out there. Whitley Strieber, um,
Yeah.
the incident there, um, Contact, and there are so many um, versions that are out there. But some of them are hoaxes too. You got to be aware of that. And on this show, we don't hoax. These are actual experiences that we have had. I've had 3 hours loss of time while I was out the Navajo Nation, but there was a purpose in it. And I think I've shared that many of times on our shows where I was supposed to help somebody along the way and lost 3 hours of missing time where I could have been further along in my travels. And so that was an interesting story in itself. And John, I think when we share these stories with others, they can identify, especially if they're looking for a
Yeah.
solution to their experiences. Like, why do I go somewhere? Abductions are completely, there are fine lines. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place a little bit. That is a fine line between time travel, time loops, time slips. Um, I mean, we happen to call them deja vu sometimes. Like, I know I've been there before. To me, those are time slips. Like, I recognize that I've been here before or I've seen that before. That is a time slip. It's
Okay.
hard
And
for
I've
time.
I've had so many cases of deja vu
Yeah,
that it's not even funny. I mean,
me
sometimes I'll
too.
just sit back and you just watch it like a TV show going on, and
Yeah.
you go, "Okay, I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to be said," and but I just want to watch it play out. And I found out in my own life by avoiding an accident at one time that it's almost like I likened it to sliding down a pipe, a half a pipe,
Mhm.
just like you're on a skateboard and you're going downhill through this half pipe. You can move to either side just a little bit, but you're still caught in the same pipe. But you can
Mhm.
move a little bit to each side, and that's what I did in this incident, which was a bunch of horses. I drove through the middle of them. And I remember seeing horses in front of my truck, horses behind me, all running across the road. And in my dream that I had, I remember being upside down in my truck thinking, how the heck am I going to explain this? Because I ran into a bunch of horses. And when I remembered that dream, I let off the accelerator, and it was just enough that I cut right in the middle of the two herds.
Well, John, you and I experienced a time slip when we were out on your ancestral lands with the producer, Steve, and that was a time slip. That was a moment in time where the vortex opened and out comes our experiences. We have told that those experiences before on our show. Um, but when you guys came up recently to do an episode, and I can't get too much into that with another guest that we've had on the show. You guys were up here, and the whole time I was sitting there speaking with you both in the hotel lobby. I was sitting there going, "We've all three been here before,"
Yeah, I
and there was
remember
somebody
that.
else with us. Do you
Right.
remember me saying that? Like
Yeah, I remember that.
I was in that present moment. I was like, "Oh, I know what you guys have done." You know, it was like memory of being there before, and I had mentioned that to you guys. And again, there's just so many experiences I'm sure you and I have had, others have had, and it's wonderful to hear the comments coming from the audience there. Um, people are saying, also remember things from the future. Now that's a tough one right there. Is that considered what I was saying, the deja vu? Is that our future converging with our past and our present? And that is an interesting topic in itself.
Yeah, and somebody mentioned Travis Walton. I think it was Bino.
Mm-hmm.
And Travis Walton is a pretty good friend of Stan and I.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked to him many, many times. And a lot of people think, they'll point at him and they'll say, oh, he just did it for the publicity. He just, wants to write books. And uh, the really, um, how can I put this and be gentle? Um, if you write a book, you're going to get pennies out of every book that's sold. That's just how the business operates.
Right.
Um, you don't make $1 million, because you sold 1 million books. Uh, you don't get that kind of money. And Travis has told me that he says, if I knew that all this stuff was going to be like this, he says, I would have never said anything. Um, because it basically, according to him, it kind of ruined his life.
Yeah.
And and just so you know, yeah, you get to travel around to all these places, but you don't get paid that much. And so a lot of times you might be breaking even or just have a little bit, but of course, you have Mother's Day and you got to pay this mother and that mother. So the money
Right.
gets burned up pretty quick.
It
And
does.
and I'm on retirement pay now, so believe me, I know. Um, so yeah, so in talking to him, I think he would have rather nothing had ever happened, because it's just a pain now, and he doesn't make very much money, and he's having to rely on all that to get by on.
Yeah, audience, this is what's really interesting. John and I do not get paid to do the show. We are simply have a motto. We want to teach people not to fear the paranormal, ufology, our customs and belief systems within our own tribes. We want to share a message. Like, we want people to have an understanding that we're here to have you share your stories and to feel like you're in a safe place. And we are so thankful for KGRA Digital Broadcasting for having us on their platform. My hand goes out to the owners and Bill, who produces the show, and thank them profusely for having us on their platform so that we can get our message out, because this is what it is. It's a message.
And the other thing we try to do is we try to put Native Americans up front.
Exactly.
because we all through history we have been underrepresented. You have famous people like Jim Thorpe, who was a two-time Olympic champion and was stripped of his medals because somebody said, "Oh, well, he played semi-professional baseball." But the thing is that um, he played professional basketball, he played professional baseball back in the 20s, and he was in professional football when they first got the NFL going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was the president of the first NFL. So, you have a guy like that that's Native American, but nobody really talks about it.
No,
Um,
and just a little plug, he was my great-grandfather's best friend from Carlisle Indian School. They were they were bunkmates back in the day when they were children, and, so, yeah, that's exciting to have that in my lineage, right?
oh, yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
people don't know that, you know? My great-grandfather played for Carlisle Indian School, and they had one upset game against Stanford University, and Carlisle won. That was epic back in 1908. Yeah, pretty interesting. Another tidbit of fact there about Native American and sports history. And thank you for mentioning that. That's kind of honorarium to Jim Thorpe. And
Yeah.
it is.
So
It
we're
is.
we're we're always going to try to put natives out there. It started really with shows like Dances with Wolves, and went
Mhm.
to Reservation Dogs and Dark Winds, and they're of course they're showing the woo woo stuff, um, and really playing up, oh, the natives are so, ecologically conscious and all this stuff. Um, we're just people like everybody else, but history is finding out that we go even further back than people realize, and even in our own oral histories, uh, the Navajo go back at least 50,000 years here, whereas the government tells us, oh, you only been around 15,000 years. And archaeology, which I'm always given a hard time to. They have their school theories that are taught by their professors, and they're going to hold up to those theories, even in the face of evidence. They're going to still say, no, this is the theory that my professor taught me, and his professor taught him, and so there's no room for anything else. Um, but we're finding out that our peoples go way way back, and I believe in South America there's an excavation that they did where they found layers of volcanic uh,
Mhm.
ash,
Mhm.
and then they found artifacts, and they can date those because of the eruptions. And they said that those artifacts dated back 420,000 years.
Absolutely. The San Clemente, also in California, I have mentioned this before, 230 years ago. And so we've been around for quite a long time. And I just want to do a little shout out to Robert Redford. He has passed on. That man represented the Native Americans in film. Dark Winds was produced by him, he was the executive producer. He started a young lady called Sydney Loveland, and she is Navajo. She's half Navajo, half Irish. There are a lot of mixed bloodlines that we have in the Navajo Nation, but she produced one of the episodes for Dark Winds, and he worked with a lot of indigenous folks. And I had the opportunity to meet him on two or three occasions when I didn't recognize them. I posted it on my Facebook. It was quite embarrassing to know that I was speaking with Robert Redford right next to me, and I didn't know who it was. I was a young mom at that time, and it took my husband to go, "Hey, hey, hey, that's Robert Redford," and I was like, "Oh." But he really loved the indigenous people. He wanted to reflect them through film. And my mother had the opportunity to meet him too in a Navajo Nation council setting, you know. And so he wanted to represent us in the most true to way that he could through the representation of film and the arts. So a shout out to Robert Redford for doing what he needed to do on this earth. And he is amazing, amazing man, or was amazing man. So he has passed on. My condolences to his family.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on out there, and we just happen to be in the right place at the right time with our messages and our information, and we're
Yeah.
still, we're going to be pushy about it and try to get it out there in front of everyone.
John, I want to thank you for being the historian on our, with our partnership as being Rangers and having that archaeological background and your profession. You had to do that while you were out in the field, and that that takes quite a learning because that's a really intricate subject and intricate profession because there's
Oh
just so
yeah.
many tactics to it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun. I got to
mhm.
work directly with archaeologists. I got to learn how to use a plane table and alidade to map an archaeological site and have on my own several times.
Mhm.
Also to map out site damage from people digging and be able to go to court and explain to them that this hole that was this deep and this wide, all the dimensions and how many square feet was removed and how much it would cost an archaeological team to go in and dig the same amount of dirt. And that's the damage assessment for that site. And when you have, in one case, we had 98 uh, holes in the ground, one of them big enough to park a Volkswagen
That's
in.
crazy.
That's how we came up with the site damage.
Mhm.
Now we have lidar. We didn't have lidar back
Yeah,
then.
we
It
have
was tape.
technology.
It was tape
Mm,
measure.
yeah.
So, but I thought it was the funnest job in the world, getting to go to these places and see these things, and a lot of times places where nobody goes and nobody gets to see them.
John, I have one more story, and then I'll let you plug us. When speaking of Sundance, I went to a local college here in Utah, and on Sundays to get away, I love nature, and I would find a spot just above the canyon up at Sundance, where Sundance Resort was, and I had a field where I could go and I would take my blanket and I was deeply religious at that time and take my Bible and the scriptures and read, and this was my connection to nature, but also to God. And but this one particular time, I fell asleep, and when I awoke, I was in this field of golden grass. And there was no golden grass there. There was nothing. And it was a field of lavender flowers, lavender. I could smell the scents. And I literally was awake. And I decided I'm going to go walk through this field of golden, fields and lavender flowers. And to this day, I want to go back and find that field. Well, when I got back to where I supposedly was supposed to be, there was no field and there were no lavender. That was another time travel, a time slip that I had. And whatever afforded me to have that experience, I have gone up even now and gone up to that area and I cannot find that field for the life of me. There you go.
Well, whatever happens to us, don't get freaked out because of it.
That's right.
Don't don't start questioning everything. Um, just go with it. Just realize that you're having experiences, and they mean something. They
Right.
have a meaning. Maybe we don't know that meaning right now. I've had dreams that I would consider visions, where
Right.
the thing was so profound that it would literally change your life if you had a similar dream.
Right.
And I've had those kind of dreams, and I always think of Graham Greene telling Val Kilmer, you had a damn vision, you know,
Yeah, exactly. In a
and
humorous.
yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna
So
put this little graphic up. Tell yourself, I am a time traveler.
yeah,
When we have
yeah.
these experience, we need to,
You
who
got to
knows?
have a picture of the TARDIS on there,
Yeah,
because we all know that time is
you're
wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff, right?
yeah,
And
exactly. It's all
and
converging.
I used to love watching Doctor Who, back in the 70s and 80s,
Right,
and yeah, it was a lot of fun just because it allowed your mind to kind of exercise a little bit and wonder, what if? And that's really important for us to always be curious, to always be seeking, you know.
right, right. I guess I maybe, I said that was my last story, but I had an opportunity to interview a lady who was up in the basin, and she was in her 80s at the time, and her husband wrote several books on the basin and ufenology, and that was Junior Hicks, and it was his wife Janelle. And I asked her about an experience that she had had while she was sitting in her living room, and she said a vortex opened up, and it was the most beautiful scene that she had. She was on her porch, and she was in a, on a lawn chair, and she sat there and watched the vortex and this beautiful, she said it was like paradise for 4 hours. 4 hours on her porch. And I said, "Janelle, didn't you have the wherewith or the desire to wanna go in?" And she goes, "No, I was at peace. I was at peace what I could see." And like you, John, you would have went right through it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I
yeah,
think I would have.
you would have. And I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it on investigations because you wanna know. You wanna know, and I think the listeners wanna know, why do these things happen? And I didn't get scientific here because there's a lot of explanations on a scientific level, but we're kind of getting back to spirit, that sometimes our spirits may want us to see these things for peace of
Yeah.
mind, for calmness.
Well,
Who knows?
like I said, everything has meaning,
Exactly.
and these things we're seeing them for a purpose, and
Exactly.
we don't know what that purpose is. We might know it later, but
Right.
if you think about it, you are the sum total of every experience you've ever had. That's it. Nothing beyond that. You
Right.
are your past experiences. And so, we look at that kind of stuff, and uh, there's much more out there. There's much more to learn. Uh, your curiosity can take you. You can, I always loved the idea of adventure.
Mhm.
Everybody that knew me growing up, they said you were always looking for adventure, and I think I found it. So, in my life, but I'm not done. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep learning, stacking up information, some of it useless, nobody knows why, but we just collect all this information. And I think it's fun.
Right. Exactly. It is, and it's different, and it's the unknown. We try not to fear it. Does it shock us sometimes? Yeah, I won't lie. We have
Or
moments where
maybe startle.
Startled, yeah, and shocked, but no fear, no fear. Guys, we just have a few minutes. We could talk about so many things. First of all, go out and if you haven't bought your copy of The Paranormal Ranger written by Stanley Milford Jr., do so. I'd like to plug his book. It's
And the paperback version is out now.
the paperback version is out. So thank you, John, for that plug. Tonight, folks, we have an extra. I am going to be on Katie Page's Where UFOs, Paranormal, and Cryptids Collide. Cryptids collide. And that show is going to be tonight at 7 p.m. on her radio station. So tune in. Well, guys, we've always have another amazing show. Thank you, AM, for amazing show. Thank you. We appreciate everybody who's been on our channel tonight. If you have any stories you'd like to share, please contact us at nativeparanormalrangers@gmail.com. Any last words, John, tonight?
Oh, just thank you to everybody that tunes in and watches us, aimlessly flap our lips and spew forth all kinds of knowledge. We appreciate it, and we would be nothing without you.
And we look forward because we're bringing up some really interesting guests going to be coming on in October on our show, and we look forward to having them all on our show. So look forward to our new guest.
Yep, same bat channel, same bat time.
That's right. Have a good night, everybody.